Hello, everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks to Go, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. I am your host, Nash, and let's get into it. How was the international break? Had your team already qualified? Did your team qualify? The thing that really puzzled me about this whole break was Sweden. They had really done nothing in the qualification rounds, but then, and literally finished the group with 1 point. But because of their strong showing in the Nations League, they somehow found themselves with an opportunity to qualify for the World Cup, even if they had done nothing. And I finally understood the purpose of the Nations League. It's like when you win the Europa Conference League, you get to go to the Europa. It has that much power. Finally, I know what it is useful for. The other thing that surprised me was Arsenal. 10 players did not go for international duty because suddenly they were injured and unavailable. And it was such blatant robbery that the football gods had them punished and had them lose to Southampton 2-1 in the FA Cup. So having lost to Man City and now to Southampton in 2 games, their quadruple hopes are done. And I think the football gods were saying you can't cheat football. And as a result, Gabriel and Saka are actually injured. In some news, there's been a double game week confirmed for game week 33. Chelsea will play Man United and Brighton, while Brighton will play Tottenham and Chelsea. I want you to remember that the double game week was going to be determined by how teams perform in the FA Cup. Now that Arsenal have been knocked out and Liverpool have been knocked out, it means those two, or rather, it means that Chelsea and Manchester City are also going to get another double game week, and Leeds. So in double game week 33, Leeds will play Wolves and Bournemouth, and Bournemouth will play Newcastle and Leeds. Manchester City will play Burnley and Arsenal, while Burnley will play Nottingham Forest and Manchester City. So in case that wasn't clear, there will be 6 teams playing twice. Bournemouth, Burnley, Brighton, Chelsea, Leeds, and Manchester City. There will also be a blank game week in game week 34, so plan accordingly. The biggest concern after such a break is, are there any injuries? Well, I'm just going to go over the teams and just tell you the injuries that I know so far. For Arsenal, you have Gabriel, who was taken out. They say he's got a knee injury. They say 3 weeks, but who knows? Let's see. So for Arsenal, you've got Gabriel, Saka, Timber, Eze, Hincapié, and Merino. Now, of course, all of these are varying. So it might be that thing from, like, for example, Saka is out of Champions League game tonight. But for others, it is touch and go. Aston Villa, Boubacar Kamara is out. For Bournemouth, Lewis Cook, Kluivert, and Soler are unavailable, or rather are on the list. And just remember that I'm saying on the list means that they're currently injured. They could make it back, but as it stands now. Brentford, Hickey, Da Silva, Milambo, Carvalho, Janelt, Rico Henry. For Brighton, Webster, Simas. Burnley, Roberts, Bayer, Amdouni, Cullen, Tresor, Tuanzebe, Mejbri. For Chelsea, Chaloba, Rhys James, Jorgensen, Gittins, Colwill. For Crystal Palace, Henderson, Doucouré, Nketiah. For Everton, Alcaraz and Grealish. For Fulham, Kevin and Kenny Tete. Leeds are unscathed, well done to them. Liverpool, Isak, Alisson, Endo, Leone, Bajetic, Danz, Conor Bradley. For Manchester City, Ruben Diaz, Josko Vadiol. For Manchester United, Dogu, although he should be coming back soon, right? Anyway, Dogu, Dalot, Heaton, Lisandro Martinez, Sesko, De Ligt. Newcastle, Botman, Guimaraes, Miley, Shar, Kraft. For Forest, Victor, Savona, Boli, Cunha. No, I didn't know they had their own Cunha. For Sunderland, Tabi, Mundle, Roofs, Traore, Angulo, Ballard. For Spurs, Bissouma, Odober, Kulusevski, Madison, Kudus, Bentancur, Davis, Vicario, Tell. Goodness, those are important players. For West Ham, Somerville, Todibo, Fabianski. And for Wolverhampton Wanderers, no injuries. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, the first thing to note is that the game week starts on Friday with West Ham taking on Wolves. West Ham had a late fight back against Leeds in the FA Cup this past weekend. They scored 2 goals in the 90 plus minutes, but which equalized the game, took them to penalties, which they eventually lost. But it was a good fight. They have fight in them. And another team that was fighting them is Wolves. In the last 5 games, West Ham have 3 draws, 1 win, 1 loss. Wolves have 2 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. This will be a close game. In their previous encounter, Wolves beat West Ham 3-0 with Arias, Huang, and Mane scoring. Now, in their last 5 games, Wolves have won 4 and lost 1. I honestly didn't expect this to be the case, but it goes to show you that Wolves have West Ham's number, and that's going to be an interesting thing. Now, even though Wolves are firmly at the bottom, West Ham have conceded 3 more goals than Wolves. Isn't that incredible? I believe that both teams will score in this game and I also believe Wolves will be stronger than than they think than we think they are, rather. I will say if you are choosing West Ham players, I would say Bowen, Fernandez, and maybe gamble with Disasi or Diouf. If you're going to choose Wolves players, I would say Mane, Armstrong, and your pick of the Gomez's. On Saturday, there's an early kickoff which will see Arsenal take on Bournemouth. Now, before you choose your Arsenal players, remember that they'll be playing in Champions League tonight, and therefore we don't know what the football gods have in store for them, and we don't know who will be available. So keep that in mind as you plan. They have lost their most recent 2 games, won 2 before that and drawn 1 before that. And those 2 losses took them out of both cups. Bournemouth have drawn 5 in a row, which just proves that they are a bit difficult to beat. They can't seem to win, they can't also seem to lose. When it comes to their most recent encounters, Arsenal have 2 victories, Bournemouth have 2, and there is a draw between them. So it is balanced. In the last game, Evanilson and Krupi scored for Bournemouth, while Gabriel had 1 and Rice had 2. Now, it seems Gabriel will be unavailable for this one. And given their most recent performances, it wouldn't surprise me if Bournemouth get a draw in this one. Maybe even 2-2. I would recommend Evanilson and Krupi, definitely, for Bournemouth. Along with, is it Scott or Christie? One of them will do something. And then for Arsenal, Rice, Gyökeres, and Trossard. But also, I wouldn't make any final decisions on them this early before the game happens. Just watch their game. Let's see who's available and who makes it out unscathed. Brentford take on Everton. Brentford have 4 draws and 1 win in their last 5, while Everton have 3 wins and 2 losses in their last 5. And their losses are to Arsenal and Manchester United, which are reasonable losses. So they've won all the other games. In my eyes, that makes them favorites in this encounter. Even though they were beaten 4-2 last time out, with Thiago having a hat-trick. Thiago had a hat-trick, which is why he's still in my game plan. He is starting. He may not be my captain, but I think this is the last game which I said I am not going to not have him in my team. So Beto and Barry scored for Everton last time out. So when it comes to head-to-head, there are 2 draws, 2 wins for Everton, and 1 win for Brentford. Even though Thiago did have a hat-trick last time out, I still believe Everton will be favoured in this encounter. So I believe there'll be goals in this game in that both teams will score. I believe you have to have Thiago, Mr. Damsgaard, and Ouattara. For Everton, I would say Beto has been sneaky good of late, and then you can have Ghana and Iliman Ndiaye. If you're one of those people who believes in their defense, just keep it up with your Tarkowski and your Pickford. Burnley take on Brighton. Brighton have been good of late. In the last 5 games, they have 4 wins and 1 loss. The 1 loss was to Arsenal. Burnley have 3 losses and 2 draws, so you can see that's contrasting form. So right off the bat, Brighton are favourites for this game. If you are looking for a Burnley player, let's see. If you believe that they can somehow hold them, then you might want Bravka or Walker. Bravka or Walker. And on the other end, you might want Fleming or Foster. If you're choosing a Brighton player, I am leaning towards getting Van Hecke because he has been low-key good of late. And then Minte and Welbeck, they have been performing over the last 2-3 weeks, so that's how I would choose. Liverpool take on Fulham. Oh my goodness, Liverpool was so disappointing against Manchester City. That 4-0 was ridiculous. Liverpool's form has not been great. In their last 5 matches, they've lost 3, won 1, drawn 1. Fulham have won 2, lost 2, drawn 1. So they're in similar form. And when I look at their head-to-head, their last encounter was a draw, with Gakpo and Vert scoring while Wilson and Reed scored for Fulham. So, in their last 5 encounters, there have been 3 draws, 1 win for Liverpool, 1 win for Fulham. So, it could go either way. Liverpool play in the Champions League, they played PSG, and I am not really encouraged for that game. And then given that, and the hangover and the possible fixtures next week, I think Fulham have a big chance to either draw or win this game. If you're choosing Liverpool players, I would encourage you to have Soboslai, Ekitike, and maybe Verts. If you're choosing Fulham players, I would say King, Wilson, and Jimenez. Crystal Palace take on Newcastle. Crystal Palace have won 2, drawn 2, and lost 1 in their last 5. Newcastle have lost 3, drawn 1, won 1. When it comes to their head-to-head, Newcastle have won 3, lost 1, drawn 1 against Crystal Palace. So they will be favourites. And if you believe that will be the case, then when you're choosing Newcastle players, the first player you should choose is definitely Gordon, and then Harvey Barnes and Tonali. If you are choosing Crystal Palace players, I would say the first player you should consider is Sarr, Strand Larson, and Munoz. Moving on to Nottingham Forest versus Aston Villa. In their last 5 encounters, Aston Villa have won 3 and have lost 2, so they are slight favourites. When it comes to recent form, Nottingham Forest have won 2, drawn 2, lost 1, while Aston Villa have won 3 and lost 2. Aston Villa have been inconsistent at best. They can beat anybody and lose to anybody, so it's very hard to know what you're getting with them. I honestly do not know how Aston Villa have maintained their position as 4th. Aston Villa and Crystal Palace are playing in Europe, so when thinking about their players, consider the European fixtures first before choosing their players. Nottingham Forest are also playing in Europe. They have a big game against Porto. So, depending on how they put their focus, this game on the weekend could be really nothing to write home about. And I also want you to remember that in between this weekend and next week, there's European fixtures this week. Then you have the Premier League this weekend, and then you have European fixtures next week. So that means that depending on how teams play, they'll be most likely focusing on not losing the second leg, regardless. So be careful when choosing players that are playing in Europe. And also, having said that, it means that also predicting their lineups will be tricky because they may want to have a stronger squad for Europe, or they also may have injuries. So please keep that in mind. I know I say this all the time, but just keep it in mind. So if I am choosing Forest players, I would have to say Morgan Gibbs-White, Igor Jesus, and Anderson. If I'm choosing Aston Villa players, I would say Rogers, Watkins, and McGinn. Sunderland take on Tottenham, and something I forgot to mention right at the top is that we have a new manager, another new manager. Can you believe Kulusevski last played for Tottenham 3 managers ago? It sounds wild. So Tottenham have brought in De Zerbi to replace Tudor. Now, they went Tudor because they thought he would make them solid at the back, but if you don't have defenders, you can't defend. Now, what they do have probably is attackers. So I think they're like, okay, we've gone this other route, let's try this other way. Now, I really don't know what he'll be able to do in such a short time because players need time. Was international break enough? I doubt it. Is he hoping for a new manager bounce? Absolutely. Honestly, new manager bounce at this rate, they should fire a manager every 3 games. But there are only 6, 7 games left, so there might not be enough time to save their season. Or maybe it's all they need. With De Zerbi, you know they will attack. With Tudor, they were trying to defend, but they couldn't defend. If you remember the injury list I read out earlier, they have no one available. And that's honestly been their problem. They need to fire their fitness coaches and hire new ones. I don't know if it's the ground that is causing the injuries, but they need to change their physical staff, their physical health staff, because this is ridiculous. No team can withstand losing that many players that are in the first team. Maybe only Chelsea because they have 30 players, you know? But most of these other teams, no. The last time they met was in January and it was a 1-1 draw with Brobby and Davis scoring. In their last 5 matches, Tottenham have won 1 against Atletico Madrid, then drawn 1 against Liverpool and lost 3. They have not really been good this year. Sunderland have lost 2, won 2 and drawn 1. Sunderland were really impressive at home, but that kind of form has kind of faltered of late, and they've lost 3 in the last 5 home games, which is quite a shame. Maybe it's against Spurs that they will be able to regain their lost form. Brobby, Diarra, and Talby are the players I'd recommend from Sunderland. For Spurs, I would recommend Pedro Porro, Richarlison, and Xavi Simons. I believe that they have something to offer. The marquee game of the match, of the game week rather, will be Chelsea versus Manchester City. Both teams were quite impressive in the FA Cup. Liverpool were destroyed by City 4-0, while Chelsea beat Port Vale expectedly 6-7-0. It was a walkover. Now, Manchester City cannot afford to drop points because they're challenging Arsenal. So anything less than a win for their next 7 matches will be disappointing for them. Now, when it comes to their head-to-head with Chelsea, they have won 4 of their last 5, drawing their most recent one, which was 1-1 with Chelsea, with Fernandes scoring in the last minute. Now, when it comes to their recent form, Chelsea have lost 4 of their last 5 games, beating Port Vale. So their form has not been great. Manchester City have won 2, lost 2, drawn 1. So City's form is a little bit better, but also nothing to write home about. Now, for City, Haaland, Semenyo, and O'Reilly are the players I'd recommend. For Chelsea, João Pedro, Neto, and Palmer are the players I'd recommend. Actually, not Palmer, Fernandes. João Pedro, Fernandes, and Neto. Chelsea are a bit weak at the back, and I think City might be too much for them. Actually, forget Fernandes. I forgot that he got suspended. He recently said that he's open to going to Real Madrid, and Chelsea found that unprofessional, and so he's been suspended for 2 games. So just go, I guess, back to Palmer. The last match of this game week will come on Monday, the 13th of April, when Manchester United will take on Leeds. As you all remember, Manchester United are out of all competitions, so they are probably going to be very fresh and very fit for this encounter. When it comes to their recent matches, Manchester United have won 3, lost 1, drawn 1. Leeds have lost 1, won 1, drawn 3. So they're both in the kind of form which makes you think that both teams are a bit tough to beat. The last time they played each other, they drew. In fact, the last 2 times they played each other, they drew. 0-0 and 1-1. In the 1-1, it was Cunha and Aronson who scored. When it comes to choosing Manchester United players, you start with Bruno Fernandes. And then only after you have Bruno Fernandes are you free to choose others. Of late, Mbumo has been a bit of a disappointment. Cunha is second best. And then you can gamble with Casemiro or Sesko. The problem with Sesko is that he comes on and you're really hoping for a goal. Now, on the Leeds end, I know we're not fans of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but you have to have Dominic Calvert-Lewin if you have Leeds players. So you have Dominic Calvert-Lewin, then maybe Okafor, and maybe Aronson since he scored in the last encounter. And that would be Game Week 32. When it comes to choosing a captain, West Ham versus Wolves, if you wanted to, you could choose Bowen or Mane. Arsenal versus Bournemouth, that's a tough one. I would go defensive. I could easily see a 0-0 in this game. So if it's Timber that you want or Saliba, probably. And on the other end, maybe your Senesi or your Hill, if you have them. On the Brentford versus Everton, Thiago scored a hat-trick last time these guys met, and I'll be hoping for that hat-trick, even though I don't think we'll get it. Honestly, it's him if you're choosing from Brentford, and if you're choosing from Everton, it's Beto and then DI, because Beto has been in good form of late. Burnley, I would say Fleming. Brighton, I would say either Van Hecke or Minte or Welbeck. Liverpool versus Fulham, that will be a tricky one because I feel like if they don't do well against PSG, they may rest players in order to be strong. So I would avoid this fixture entirely for Liverpool captains. But if you're choosing from Fulham, I would encourage you to look at maybe Wilson. There's a potential for an upset in this encounter. While Liverpool are trying to salvage their season, I think Champions League is going to be their main focus for the rest, well, for the next week. So King or Wilson? Crystal Palace versus Newcastle. Newcastle are already out of Europe. Crystal Palace are still in Europe, which puts them at a disadvantage because they'll have to play a second leg. And so I would therefore look at Gordon or Harvey Barnes. Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa, thankfully, are both playing Europe, so they're going to be in a similar predicament. And I would avoid this fixture for captaincy. Sunderland versus Spurs, I would say Morgan Gibbs-White, but they're also playing in Europe. No, sorry. Sunderland, I would say Broby. Broby is the guy. I wouldn't really choose a Spurs guy until we figure out who he's going to play and what the team looks like and where the opportunities fall. Chelsea versus Manchester City, Haaland or Semenyo. You can choose João Pedro or Palmer, but I would start with Man City before going to Chelsea. Manchester United versus Leeds, honestly, it is Bruno Fernandes and then Dominic Calvert-Lewin and then Cunha or Mbomo. When it comes to the FPL FDR, Arsenal have Bournemouth, Manchester City, Newcastle, Fulham, and West Ham next. Those are, Man City and Newcastle will be potentially tricky. Also, this immediate Bournemouth fixture in between two Champions League games. And I'm not sure they'll be as solid as they have been, but let's see what happens. Aston Villa have Forest, Sunderland, Fulham, Tottenham, and Burnley. In theory, these are all winnable games. With this, they can solidify their position as number 4 and get into Champions League next season. But they've been so inconsistent, it's hard. But honestly, I think it's worth getting like one of McGinn, Rodgers, or Watkins. Bournemouth have Arsenal, Newcastle, then a blank, Crystal Palace, and Fulham. So they've been tough to beat. So getting players that represent their toughness is what you should be looking at. Brentford have Everton, Fulham, Man United, West Ham, and Manchester City. Not easy games, but Brentford have been underestimated the whole season, so continue with your Brentford players. Have either your Collins or your Thiago or your Damsgaard or your Shada or your Watara. One of those 4. Brighton have Burnley, Tottenham, blank week, Newcastle, and Wolves. So I remember at the beginning I said there's a blank week coming, and that blank week is going to be devastating. So I would encourage you to start planning. Burnley have Brighton, Nottingham Forest, blank, Leeds, and Aston Villa. Burnley have not been great, and I don't think they will be doing well either way. Chelsea have Man City, Man United, Forest, and Liverpool. This is why I got out of my Chelsea players. These are just tough games, and with their defense playing as shakily as they have been recently, I expect them to concede many goals. Crystal Palace have Newcastle, West Ham, Liverpool, Bournemouth, and Everton. It's a mixed bag of fixtures. They will win some and they will lose some. Everton have Brentford, Liverpool, West Ham, Man City, and Crystal Palace. Everton have been better than I thought, but also not great, but they can also surprise you. So if they disappoint Manchester City, I wouldn't be surprised. I would say bank on their midfield more than their defense. If you have like Ghana or NDI, I think that would be a great way to go. Fulham have Liverpool, Brentford, Aston Villa, Arsenal, and Bournemouth. These are all tricky fixtures. I would ease out of Fulham, but also not until that blank game week. Leeds have Man United, Wolves, then the blank, then they have Burnley and Tottenham. Leeds are fighting, and they will fight. So even if some games don't look like they'll go in their favor, I think they will be competitive. It's just a matter of figuring out who it is because the goals are spread and it makes it hard. It's not just Dominic Calvert-Lewin as it was before. It could be Aronson, it could be Mecha, it could be Okafor. So choose carefully. Liverpool have Fulham, Everton, Crystal Palace, Man United, and Chelsea. Liverpool maybe will pick up form, but they have been so disappointing. Slot is not having a great season. This is how I thought their last season was going to go, but it seems like it's gone in an inverse way. Anyway, with them, they should have enough to beat Fulham, Everton, and Crystal Palace, but they're not playing like they can. Manchester City have Chelsea, and then they have Arsenal, and then the blank week, and then Everton and Brentford. So for people like me who have 3 players from Manchester City, then I have Brighton players, this blank week is going to be tough. Anyway, Manchester United have Leeds, Chelsea, Brentford, Liverpool, and Sunderland. They have been in great form since Carrick took over, and I believe this will continue. The games are not easy, but I think they have enough to win at least 3 of the 5. Newcastle have Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Brighton, and Nottingham Forest. I would just say just get Gordon. Get Gordon and then forget about everything else. Nottingham Forest have Aston Villa, Burnley, Sunderland, Chelsea, Newcastle. Not easy games, and this run will determine whether they stay. That will be interesting, but they're going to fight. Burnley, yeah, I would say, if you can choose your first player well, you can get something. Spurs have Sunderland, Brighton, Wolves, Aston Villa, and Leeds. Now, it's all dependent on what the new manager brings. So with them, I'm going to reserve judgment at least until I've watched 2 games. Sunderland have Tottenham, Villa, Forest, Wolves, and Man United. They have 3 home games. That used to mean a lot, but now not so much. So I would say get Robbie and maybe Talby and then see. West Ham have Wolves, Crystal Palace, Everton, Brentford, Arsenal. Apart from Arsenal, I believe they can be competitive in the rest of the fixtures. And then the Arsenal game, it might depend on how Arsenal are doing by that time. Wolves have West Ham, Leeds, Tottenham, Sunderland, and Brighton. Wolves are fighters, and they will fight. Don't bet against them. That's all I will tell you. And with that, we have come to the end of this week's podcast. Remember, the game week starts on Friday. Remember the European midweek fixtures. So if you have players coming from there, be careful. Outside that, have a great remainder of your week and see you on the pitch. Bye.